Love you too, Chicky. Yeah. Bye. And we're just waiting right now. Bum, bum, bum. Hey, can you hear me?
I can. How are you, Josh?
Oh, good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well, thank you.
Awesome. Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, thank you
Pardon me.
very much for agreeing to do this. Normally, like I said, I've had candidates in my home. I'm sure you know Catherine's wife. She's been here a couple times, but I've interviewed candidates from most parties. I invite them all. Bardish Chagger is the only one who continues to ignore my messages. But, you know, I've even met with people from PPC and other smaller parties than that, like the Animal Protection Party, because they have somebody running in Waterloo as well. So I'm hoping to talk to everybody, and yeah, I'm just happy you could make it.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, hopefully everyone does get back to you and you can have everyone in.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. Okay, so I would just like to, if you don't mind, like I'm gonna have some questions for sure that I want to ask, but I just want to start out with you know, you telling me about yourself, what I should know about you. I guess why I should vote for you, but really just mostly I just want to hear about you, why you're running and things like that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's the key question, right?
Yeah.
My name's Jonathan Cassels. My background, I'll start right there, is primarily in finance professionally. So I've worked for banks for a number of years. Last couple of years, I've been a stay-at-home dad through the pandemic and mostly because of the pandemic. Um, that's professionally in that. I've also been an activist involved, particularly in electoral reform. Worked on that quite a lot. Pharmacare, because it impacts my family really directly. And yeah, I also talk quite a lot about affordable housing, just because that's a really nice intersection of what I do professionally and what I've done as an activist. The reason I'm running is primarily because of unkept promises, right? When we look at things like disability benefits and pharmacare and affordable childcare, these are all things that have been part of what politicians are talking about for a very long time.
Right.
They're all things that have been promised for a long time, and they just haven't been delivered. And so, really, the reason I'm running is because we need to get some people in there who will actually follow through on these things. And my own personal experience in terms of, you know, in terms of knowing what it's like to see those promises, to know how much those would help you and your family when you're struggling, and then not seeing them come to fruition. You know, we need people who've been through that experience, frankly. And you know, I'm running to make sure those things happen.
Awesome. That makes sense. Yeah, I think far too many of our politicians, our prime minister, the prime example, I don't think he knows what it is to be the average Canadian. He likes to say he does, and but at the same time, he'll admonish us, and from the other side of his mouth. A couple of things you
Yeah.
mentioned: farm care, disability benefits.
Hmm.
Some of those things that you mentioned, you know, the federal government has a hand in them, but like healthcare and things like that, that's more the domain of the province. So, but I am
Hmm.
still interested in asking you, what do you think, your government and you yourself, like, what would an NDP government do, and what would you do yourself to make sure, like, like, just for example, in Ontario, the support program is ODSP, as you're aware.
Hmm.
It keeps people with disabilities like myself living in poverty.
Absolutely,
Affordable
it does.
affordable housing is so non-existent. The wait list is years and years, and we've seen the price of an average home in KW go in the last 10 15 years go from 250,000 to 700, 800, $900,000. Like, most people can't buy a home. Like,
Hmm.
it's just not realistic anymore. So what can you do? How do you either support the provinces or encourage, nudge, nudge the provinces to, to do
Yeah.
what they should be doing?
So there's a lot of different pieces to that question, and I'll
Yeah,
try to get to all of them, and
sure.
you hold me to account if I miss any,
I'll
okay?
try.
So the first thing when it comes to talking about whether those things belong to provinces or the federal government, when you're getting into something like pharmacare, it's one of the few things right in the Constitution where it's split, right? So it's
Right.
both federal and provincial, and we have a long history of the federal government funding things like hospital care as part of our healthcare program.
Right.
And there's absolutely nothing stopping the federal government working with provinces to make sure that pharmacare is included in the same way that other things are included under our public healthcare system now. And that's probably the best way to do it. Making sure that we're working with provinces is going to be the most efficient thing because there are programs in place that we can build off of and make sure that these things get in place. At the same time, when it comes to the ability to fund these things, to spend money on these things, the federal government has a lot of access to finances and can spend money effectively on what it chooses to spend money on. So if if we wanted a program where you could literally just send in your receipts from any prescription drugs that you purchased and have them reimbursed, I mean, that's a really simplistic program, but the federal government has the authority to do that kind of thing. And so when we're getting into that stuff, yes, we need to work with the provinces. Yes, that's exactly what we need to do. But some of the barriers that you hear talked about from people who don't really want to follow through on those commitments, who are looking for reasons to delay, reasons not to do them, you can find ways. The federal government has a lot of levers of power to make sure that things get done. When we're into housing, similar kind of answer, right? Where banks in particular, when it comes to things like mortgages and how that works, are federally regulated. So it's even more direct there where we can do that and we can build more homes. We can have federal programs working with provinces, working with municipalities to make sure that we're building homes, bringing down costs that way, quality, affordable homes. That's what we need. We
Right.
don't just need, license writ large to build or expand on already large and expensive homes. Quality, affordable homes is what we'd be targeted at there.
Okay, I got a bit of a follow-up question on that because it's actually not something I'm very knowledgeable on. And it's something that Trudeau has brought up recently about talking to the banks and stuff like that. And I'm like, well, why haven't you done it the last 6 years? Anyways, so what can you do or affect with the banks, and what role does the banks have in affordable housing?
Okay, so there's a couple different sides to this. So right at the start, we need to make sure that there are funds available, before you're purchasing a home. Typically, when someone gets to purchasing a home, that's one stage in life, and we want everyone to be able to get there. But we also need to make sure that there are affordable homes that you can rent, right? And so part of that is simply supply. So part of that is just making sure that we have programs that are building homes. Our plan is basically 500,000 affordable quality homes that would primarily fit right into that bracket through programs that are largely publicly owned, right? So cooperatives, social programs that are going to actually run and build these homes directly.
Okay.
So that's where we start. And then we move into making sure that all homes that are built, that we don't have a runaway real estate market, right? So a lot of the plans that are circulating right now are about putting more money into the real estate market, which just drives up prices and, it isn't really what we need. So when it comes to banks, things that we can do, we can increase the length of mortgages that people can access when they're buying a home without necessarily increasing the amount that they can borrow. So this is something that I personally am a big proponent of. This comes right out of my wheelhouse in banking, where we don't necessarily, if 3 people are bidding on a home to purchase a home, what 2 of them are going to walk away disappointed, and 1 of them is going to get it no matter what. Yep. So you need to increase supply, but then once they've actually purchased that home, once that one person has purchased their home, we need to make sure that the costs are lower. And so if we can increase the amount of time that their mortgage is over, so right now the maximum for most new home buyers is 25 years. So if we can increase that to 30 or 35 years, without necessarily increasing the amount that they need to borrow, because, if they can purchase the home now, we don't need to pour more money into that, then their payments each month are lower. They become more affordable, and there's more money for everything else.
Okay.
And that is directly under federal jurisdiction. So when you're buying your first home, you're usually insured by a crown corporation called CMHC. And the rules for how they lend, so there's right now a cap where their mortgages can't last more than 25 years. So increasing that to 30 or 35 years is a direct power that the federal government has.
Is there an artificial way that they're getting to 30 and 35 years right now, or is that, have I misheard? Because I thought I've heard of some 30 and 35-year mortgages, and maybe that's in the US, or maybe there's some loophole.
Yeah, so we're getting into the technical stuff now.
Yeah.
But this is good.
I'm just curious.
The numbers used to be higher. Okay. So in the past, you could do 30, 35, and 40 year even. Those were all allowed at different times. So we wouldn't be going to, uncharted territory if we increase that more. And also, if you're able to make a down payment on your home that's more than 20% of the home's value, you don't need that insurance, and you can have a longer mortgage with your bank. So there are people right now getting mortgages that are 30 years. But they're typically not new home buyers. No,
because 20% of a new home in Waterloo region, that's over $100,000 for the.
It's a lot of money. Yeah, it absolutely is.
Yeah. Okay. You mentioned co-ops. I live in a co-op myself, and I got mixed feelings about co-ops and buildings that are like wholly designated as low income, because I kind of think it's segregation. I don't see a lot of people with disabilities living in $800,000 houses. Like most of the people with disabilities are living in like 5 or 6 apartment complexes scattered throughout Waterloo. I got mixed feelings about that. People with disabilities, I feel, are being segregated. People with different socioeconomic statuses are being segregated.
Mhm.
Um, can we have a system where we don't lump all the quote unquote poor people, undesirables, whatever, because that's what it feels like sometimes. We're being pushed into one corner and,
Mhm.
this is your area of town. And then, the nicer parts, those are for the people with, six digits in their income.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying on it, and I think that um, to a large extent, with how things are today, you're right. Right, like that is a problem with how the programs we've had in the past have been structured and how they've developed. Um, you know, I'm a big believer in the idea that homes and housing shouldn't really be commodified. Like as much as possible, we should be making sure that everyone needs a home.
Mhm.
Uh, so everyone should have a home. And as those types of ideas become expanded, right? It's not, as you put it, an idea for the poor people.
Yeah.
It's something that we can do for, most people
Yeah.
or a lot of people within our society, and start breaking down some of those walls, breaking down some of those barriers. Like one of the things driving our real estate markets these days is foreign investors, right? People pouring lots and lots of money into
Blackwater,
properties that are dry.
Blackstone.
Pardon me?
What's the company? Blackwater, Blackstone, something
Uh,
like that. They're buying millions and millions of Toronto real estate from the States. Do you know
so
that?
there's a
Yeah.
I don't know exactly which company you'd be
Okay.
referring to, and
Yeah.
um, wouldn't want to call out a
Oh,
specific company
sure,
name
sure. Yeah,
without confirming it. But
yeah, for sure. I understand.
um, yeah, I mean, one of the things we want to do is to introduce a 20% home speculator tax on foreign investors, right? We want to make sure that homes in Canada are homes for Canadians.
Yeah.
And I think we can do that. And I think that um, as we expand on those programs, like this is why we talk about quality homes, right? We want everyone to have access to
Yeah.
a quality home. Um, and if the homes we're making are quality, then and we make sure that people are able to get into them,
Yeah.
regardless
Visitable
of
homes.
their, economic position, then we can get into a place where there's much less of that divisiveness in them. There's much less
Right.
of the separation, and it's where people live, and that would be a good outcome. That would be the outcome that I at least would be targeting.
Right.
And I mean, the other side of that is making sure that everyone is guaranteed a livable income no matter what life throws at them, right? So everyone's in, if everyone has access to a quality home and everyone has the income they need to support themselves in that home, then we get rid of a lot of those separations that
Right.
you're familiar with, that you're talking about
Right.
with how those structures exist today.
Okay. So do you and the NDP support a universal basic income then?
So a universal basic income is one way to guarantee that everyone has a livable income, that a livable income is
Right.
guaranteed. It's one of the ways that I think we could move forward. I can't sit here today and say to you, no matter what, UBI is the way to go and the thing that I would support above and instead of everything else in order to make sure that everyone is guaranteed a livable income.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. But you would some way find a way to everyone have
Yeah,
a livable income. Okay.
yeah,
Because, and you mentioned, you know, you think Canadian homes should be for Canadians. I
yeah.
think we should take care of people in our country first as
Mhm.
well. And I don't think that's, I mean, sometimes you see that and people are like, racism, stuff like that. And it's like, well, it's nothing to do with race. It has to do with, like if a couple had two kids and they're just scraping to get by. Would it be financially smart for them to have a third child? No, maybe not. So maybe they would just be, good financial stewards of their two children, right?
So
I want to put it like a family analogy, and then I just want to bring up something a little bit like it's anecdotal, I know, but for me, I get support from ODSP. It's about 1,300 a month, and people not from this country come to our country, and I think there should be a certain amount of people that we do help, but when they immediately come to Canada, and what I saw was they're getting about $1,900 a month, and I'm like, I could really use an extra $600 a month, like really, like honestly.
yeah.
Why?
Can I jump in on that?
Yeah. Why?
Yeah,
Why
so-
am I getting shafted?
So the first thing I want to say,
getting shafted.
so the first thing I want to say is when I'm talking about Canadians in terms of homes, and homes in Canada, what I'm
Yeah.
talking about is people in Canada.
Yeah.
It's not a comment on citizenship
No,
or
I know.
immigration or anything like that. I just, if someone is living overseas, right?
Yeah.
If someone doesn't live in Canada, homes in Canada need to
Yeah.
make sure that, they're housing people in Canada.
Yes.
And that's their purpose, that's their function, rather than anything else. So I don't know exactly what wording I used before.
No, it's
but
okay.
when I'm talking about Canadians, that's what I mean.
Okay.
As far as, you talking about where money is going and how much, particularly to people with disabilities, is going, when we talk about a guaranteed livable income, making sure that that guarantee exists, the place to start, and right in our platform, this is something that I feel really strongly about. We talk about starting with seniors and with people with disabilities. So that's a program that we need to build, and that is exactly where we start. So we've just been through a pandemic where sort of $2,000 was set as the amount that people need to get through tough times.
Yeah,
right? $2,000 a month.
I didn't get $2,000 a month.
Yeah, me neither.
I got $1,300 a month, and I got a one-time check of $600.
Yeah.
I spent way more on PPE alone than $600.
Yeah, and I mean, there was no change to the support that was coming to you.
No.
I've been speaking to people who got no support at all, as well. And none of that is acceptable, right? So when we're talking about a guaranteed livable income, at least in my mind, right now with where we are, $2,000 a month is sort of the benchmark that's been established. That's
Okay.
the amount that we need to make sure we're looking at.
That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Pardon me while I drink some water here.
Yeah, by all means. Of course. Something that you are passionate about because you said so, and I saw on your Twitter profile that you were I think, chairperson of this organization, is Electoral Reform.
Yep.
Again, that was promised, 7 years ago, and then Trudeau said Canadians don't actually want that.
Yep.
Yeah, we do. Tell me about your particular passion for electoral reform and what the NDP would do to make sure that actually every vote matters. Because I know every vote does matter to a degree, but when we can win a majority government on 36% of the vote, the majority has not spoken, but they get the majority of the power. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Just tell me about your passion and what NDP would do.
Sure. So what the NDP would do would be to bring in a system just like what's used in New Zealand. So I don't know. I know that.
I don't know New Zealand too well.
Yeah. So basically, there's a system. It's called MMP. mixed member proportional. People who are into this stuff are really bad at naming things. Okay, so I didn't name it, forgive me. But basically what you do is you elect MPs just like we do now from specific ridings. Okay, so you would vote for someone local, you'd keep your local representative. And then on the other side of the ballot, you would also tick a box for the party that you support.
Right.
Okay, so now there's two sides of the ballot. We'd figure out how many seats are going to all the candidates locally across the country. And let's say there's a party that wins 50. But on the other side of the ballot, where you've selected the party, they win a percentage there that says that they should have got 60 seats. They get 10 top-up seats.
Okay.
That's how it works. So you've got local MPs, and then you've also got top-up seats just to make the percentages match.
Right.
And my preference is that those top-up seats go to people who almost won in their ridings.
Yeah.
So it's the people who are closest to winning get the top-up seats, though that's a detail that we're committed to making sure would actually go to a citizens' assembly. So we'd get a group of everyday Canadians together to look at those details and make the decisions because politicians have a vested interest. Some of the decisions might be good for people who've been elected, and some might be not ideal for people who've already been elected. So there's a conflict of interest there, and we'd give those decisions to everyone else. Okay, and the reason for this is, partly what you said about making sure that the percentages that go to the parties match the number of seats they get.
Yep.
Right? Parties that win 32, 33% of votes should not get 55 or 56% of the seats and all of the power.
Yep.
The other thing that you get is more cooperation. So something, there's value in, making sure that someone will vote for you locally and for your party. And so parties tend not to go head to head in the same way in a system like that.
Right.
You get a lot less conflict, and you get things like New Zealand right now has a true majority where the party that is in government, they got more than half the votes, so they got more than half the seats. They still went to another party and invited two of their members to join cabinet, right? To join the government to help govern the country. And that's something that I can't imagine happening in Canada.
No.
Like I can't imagine, either any of the conservative governments or liberal governments we've had, certainly in my lifetime, going, you know what, we have a majority here, we have all the power, and we're still going to share it by choice.
Yeah, like how smart would it be? Say the liberals, have another or whatever. Just we'll go back in the past. The liberals with their majority government, but they knew they had a superstar, say in the NDP, that could have been an excellent, say, minister of whatever's. Like, why not do that? Why not give Canadians the best minister you can give them, right? Yeah, I love it.
That's exactly it. And you were saying my background and my interest or my passion for this. As you said, I've been the chair and vice president of a not-for-profit that this is what it advocates for. I've taken a leave of absence to run in the election.
Would there be a conflict of interest if you had stayed?
The requirements of Elections Canada are that I can't. Yeah, you can't be on both sides of that. We need to make sure that we're doing the right thing and separating out everything there. But yeah, so I've taken a leave of absence from that, but that is part of my biography. That's part of my past and what I've done on this.
That's great. Okay. I mean, some of the hot topic issues, some of them are kind of silly, but I don't think I want to talk about vaccine passports or mandatory vaccines, but maybe just if you could share kind of a broad plan of how Canada, recovers, what it looks like. Does that include maybe a vaccine passport? I don't know. You just It's so divisive, I know. So
It is.
it is hard to answer. Maybe I don't
Yeah.
know. It's hard to ask the question because I don't even know where I stand on certain things.
Mhm.
I'm a big proponent of personal freedoms. I'm also a big proponent of common sense. I'm also a big proponent of if if private businesses want to only open up to vaccinated people because that's their choice too. I think I have a lot of nuanced, weird views, and don't really have. I don't really land on any one spot, but I'd love to hear what you think on that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, it's a very hot topic. Um, when we get into mandatory vaccines, we've had mandatory vaccines in Canada for a long time.
Uh,
This isn't some, new proposal that we don't have experience with, that we haven't seen before. Um, you know, everyone needs vaccines. I've just registered my first child for kindergarten this year. He's starting junior kindergarten. One of the things the school wanted to know was, vaccines. You need vaccines to go to school.
yeah.
So when we start talking about mandating vaccines and that kind of thing, and people talk about it being something new, something untried, something untested, it's not, right? Like, this is something that has been done for a long time. And I mean, look at the impact COVID has had on our society, right? Um, when we're looking at that. At the same time, though, I think that it's fairly clear that there's really strong opposition to it, and that anything like that that came in would work its way through the courts and take a long time. And, if that's what's going to happen, we need to make sure we have a really, really strong voluntary vaccine program going on. We need to make sure we're reaching people, that we're talking to people, that we're meeting everyone where they're at to get absolutely everyone we can who is eligible vaccinated as quickly as possible. Because, if we need to wait 6 months or a year or longer, before we actually could go ahead any other way, well, that's way too long.
Yeah.
Right. We need a really robust voluntary
Yeah.
vaccine program,
Agreed. And one
regardless of anything else.
and one that reaches people that are harder to reach, because I think a criticism of a vaccine passport is that it will negatively affect people with, again, lower incomes.
Yep.
People with disabilities who
Yeah.
I chose to not go out and get my vaccine. I waited for home visits. I just got my second one about 3 weeks ago. When
Yep.
really somebody as vulnerable as myself, I should have got it back in the spring. But there wasn't an opportunity. Well, there was if I wanted to go out and sit in the lineup, but as you can see from the picture, I have a ventilator. I mean, if I get COVID, I don't even want to think what would happen, right? So I wasn't willing to go out and stand in lineups with other people. I wanted the home visit, and I don't think, making me wait an extra 4 months was the safe thing to do, but that's the way it was. So it doesn't make a lot of sense, but that's a problem. Just another thing to consider with the passports.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, I've said this. I've said this in the last week, which is that any plan that doesn't in some ways start with thinking about people with disabilities is a bad plan.
Yeah.
Right. Like, that needs to be at the core of how we're thinking about all kinds of things, but especially when we're talking about health, when we're talking about social services, right? Like, that needs to be affordable housing. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, that can't just be something that's tacked on after the fact, or we come up with a plan and, figure out something on the side there too. Like, that needs to be core and central to every plan right from the start.
what my co-op has done, and it was built like 30 years ago, and there's a term for it now, is visitable homes, is that every single unit, well, not every unit is fully designed for somebody with a disability. Every single unit in my co-op is at least visitable. I can get in through the front door and into their living room. So I could have dinner with my neighbors, right? And I just, I, I don't know why we haven't seen the legislation yet where every single new low income housing is at least visitable for people with disabilities. That meaning that there's no step or whatever, there's a ramp or something to get into the home. A person using a wheelchair can get into the home, ideally use like the living room or whatever dining room, dine with the people that they're visiting. And this is a big one, use the bathroom, because you know many people with disabilities get into their friend's home and then they just have to hold it the whole time they're there. It's unbelievable.
Yep. Yeah, it's a great suggestion, a great idea that it's the kind of thing that shows how badly we need to make sure that people with disabilities are part of the discussion and part of the process. Because so often what doesn't get included in plans is things exactly like that, that anyone who has that, the lived experience will immediately say, we need to do this. And so that's, that's part of making sure that those thoughts, those processes are at the center of plans.
For sure. I could probably ask you questions for hours and hours on end. I love talking about this kind of stuff, but we're already at 40 minutes and I said half an hour. So I would just if you can just maybe talk about maybe one more issue that's important to you and kind of give me your quote unquote sales pitch for your vote in September.
Yeah, I mean, the things that I feel most linked to are the things that we've discussed, right?
Yeah.
So when we're looking at housing, as I say, especially on the banking side, I've got something to really contribute and say there. Same kind of thing on election reform, same with pharmacare, right? Like we haven't really spoken a ton about where my passion for pharmacare comes from, but
just speak on that for a couple minutes if you want.
Yeah, so let me talk.
It might have been a bit personal, so I didn't.
It is. So I'll give you. I'll be a little vague in a couple places, and ask you to be generous in how you understand it. Right in my family, in my immediate family, there is someone who requires prescription drugs to live. And we have been in the position where we haven't had drug benefits. For about 6 months during COVID, we didn't, at other times in our life. And in fact, this very month, this is a glitch in a drug insurance program, but our coverage got accidentally canceled and we had to pay it out of pocket. And so $600 this month, right, out of my family's bank account, for prescription medications, just so that someone who I love can live. And like that is something that there's lots of there's lots of people who've gone to Ottawa understanding that, but it's something that not enough have been through. And once you've been there for a while, you're very separated from it. And so when we get into that type of a thing, you need to make sure that there are people there who have had those experiences. I mean, ideally, we don't want anyone to have those experiences.
No.
But it's incredibly important, right? Like it's incredibly important. It's understood through lived experience. And the truth is that we have a government right now that is composed of a party that's been promising pharmacare for more than 20 years. It was part of a Liberal platform in 1997. they've been in power for 6 years now, and just now they're telling us that they're getting to it. And when I dig into the details, it really seems like they're not. It really seems like we're at least a decade away from having any kind of pharmacare with the path that the Liberals may be on. And that's just too long, right?
Yeah, it's lip service. It's lip service. We have to know it. Like,
I mean, this is the thing. Like, they've been in power 6 years.
Yeah.
And just in the last couple months, even just in the last couple weeks, they've made a few announcements. But what happened? Was this not a priority for them? Did they forget up until now? I've read, I read the budgets every year.
Okay.
In 2019, in the Liberal budget for pharmacare, it was 5 pages, and it was on something like page 38. So it was pretty far up in their budget. In 2021, which was their next budget, it was half a page, and it was on page 138. They cut out literally 90% of what was there. And the things that they called foundational as getting to pharmacare in 2019 were completely gone. They haven't done those things. Things like they said that they'd set up a Canada Drug Agency that would negotiate prices and work with the provinces and do all that kind of thing. It wasn't done. And the promise to do it completely disappeared, along with about 90% of what had been in there originally. And that's just not a government that is committed to it. That's not a government that's making it a priority or really interested in making progress, right? It's a talking point for them. And for someone like me, for a family like mine, pharmacare can't be a talking point, right? It's something that needs action. So that's where I come from on that issue. That's some insight, at least, into my family's own experience with it.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Jonathan, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
And
thank you for having me.
I'll probably email you or reach out to you on Twitter. Maybe I'll probably email you. I prefer that, actually. Mm-hmm. But if I have any other questions during the campaign, I hope you'll be gracious and answer those for me. And I'm gonna wish everyone I talk to best of luck. But just best of luck to you, and I just hope I hope Canada is in good hands next month.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for taking the time to do this, Josh. This kind of thing is important, and having people setting it up, people with lived experience that relates to all of these questions is an incredible thing. You're doing something very good here.
Oh, I appreciate that. All right, thanks, Jonathan. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
All right, peace.